Right, ladies and gentlemen, it has gone 6 o'clock, so we will make a start. I do apologise for the rather frigid atmosphere in the chamber. It is rather cold, so please forgive us as members for wearing something slightly warmer. Agenda item number 1 is the evacuation procedure. Everyone present, including members of the public, have heard it before, so I am not going to repeat it. It is as printed. Apologies. Item 2, all of Cabinet are present. Declarations of interest. Are there any declarations beyond those which are printed in the agenda? I'm not seeing any. No. That leads us on to agenda item number 4, which is the minutes of the last meeting. Is everyone happy that I sign them as a true and accurate record? Thank you. Leads us on to agenda item number 5, which is public consultation. I've not been made aware of any members of the public who wish to speak. Mr. Main, do you wish to speak on any agenda item before I carry on? Okay, thank you. In which case we'll move on to agenda item number 6, which is the Pingles Leisure Centre and Stadium Decarbonisation Scheme submission. Councillor Markham.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. This report provides Cabinet with an overview of the Council applying for government funding and Sport England funds to support new commercial heating systems within the Pingles Leisure Centre and the Pingles Stadium. If successful, it will also benefit by the modernisation of these essential building traditional heating services. The bid is primarily about moving away from the current fossil fuel energy reliance, and Pingles current total heating plant assets are past their recommended lifespan. The bid outcomes will take the Pingles Leisure Centre and the Pingles Stadium to an energy efficient and a sustainable net zero future. To achieve the full expectations of the PSDS, a design and data comparison of carbon existing plant and carbonless proposed plant must be produced to obtain a compliance to the scheme's criteria. This bid is anticipated to be at least 4 times oversubscribed for the funding available at this time. So whilst we've achieved a technical scheme compliance for submission, there's no guarantee that the Council will successfully get this round of funding, and there's no other rounds actually being announced yet. But we've applied for it, and that's why we've applied for it. Thank you, Chair. Can I just ask for the recommendations as printed? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Markham. Is there a seconder? Councillor Gutteridge.
I'll second that, Chair. I reserve the right to speak.
Okay, thank you. Any non-cabinet member? Councillor Condacourt.
Thank you, Chair. I'm a bit croaky, so apologies if I speak a bit slowly. This is really good news if we win this bid. Obviously, it's a 1 in 4 chance or whatever winning it, but the officers sent me the details of what was being proposed in terms of a new heating system, and I'm really pleased with it. Yeah, it's properly zero carbon. Obviously, there's more to do, solar panels, etc. But as far as the heating system, this would really future-proof the Pingles. I know we need to do that as well because it's not going to be very soon before we've got any money to replace it. So I'm very pleased generally with this item and look forward to us hopefully winning the bid. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Condacourt. Any points of clarification? No. Anything officers wish to come back on at all? No. Councillor Gutteridge, you reserved your right? Okay, in which case we'll move to the recommendations as printed. All those in favour, please show. That's carried. Thank you very much. That moves us on to agenda item number 7, which is the polling district and polling place review. Councillor Croft.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. As you will be well aware, we've just had a review of our local government boundaries and in time for the elections next May, and this is the natural corollary to that we have to publish a new schedule of polling stations, and as with everything we do, we've had to take that out to extensive consultation, and this is the result. So I'll move the report, the recommendations in the report, that we approve the schedule and that we delegate authority to the returning officer in case there's any emergency last-minute alterations that need to be made. And I've just been told this afternoon that the report does refer to Appendix B, but we won't be publishing in Appendix B because we're not required to actually publish the feedback, and I do think that is appropriate. If people have given us feedback in confidence, we shouldn't really be putting it in the public domain, either verbatim or in summary. But our splendid head of elections is available to answer any questions to members if they have any questions about it. So I'd like to thank him and the team.
Thank you, Councillor Croft, and I will second that from the Chair. Any non-Cabinet member wish to speak? Councillor Condacore.
Thank you. I can't really argue with the outcome we've come up with because there's a problem with a lack of polling station sites in the new housing. We've built a lot of new housing in Wellington, and there's a lack of public buildings or public open space to put porter cabins on these new sites at the moment. And it's the same with St Nicholas. We've just been building out to the A5, and we haven't yet got anything in terms of a building that you could actually use or any land that is actually publicly owned, because a lot of the sites aren't adopted. I hope when some of the sites become adopted, some of the open space could actually then have a porter cabin on it or whatever. But at the moment, I can't see how the officers can do a better job. So it's far from ideal. We've got a lot of people going a long way from the new developments into the traditional out parts of Wellington and St Nicholas to find a polling station. And it's going to be really difficult if we do have a general election in May because of the complexities at the polling stations with voter ID, new boundaries, and 3 elections or 2 elections at the same time. So luckily I'm not the returning officers or his deputies. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Condacore. Any points of clarification? No. Apparently, the Chief Executive has just pointed out that it should be Appendix A on paragraph 4.8 rather than Appendix B, but in either event, it's not published because of the reasons that Councillor Croft stated. Councillor Condacore is correct. It is a difficult exercise to undertake, and I know that the whole elections team have been working very hard, consulting all local members on potential sites, and there is an issue about trying to find suitable venues across the borough, particularly, I have to say, on the north and the eastern side of Nuneaton, actually, for a number of the reasons that Councillor Condacore stated, and the fact that some places which were polling stations have now withdrawn their consent, or other things have happened in the meantime. So that does place a problem. We are trying to be as creative as we possibly can. I know I, for instance, have made some representations to the team about the Crow Hill estate, which gets split in 2 between Whitestone and the new Eastborough ward, and that is still unresolved. And officers are going to continue to work on those unresolved issues, as they do say in the report in the appendix, in the table, the different polling districts and the assigned locations. There are still some to be confirmed, so part of the recommendations do allow that to be delegated in consultation, which I think is the most sensible solution that we can arrive at this time. And also, I think it's important to do so because we have full council next week to do this, and the annual massive rollover that we have every December, which is why we've tried to push it through in time for that rollover, because the administrative task of trying to do it halfway through after December and between an election, I think would send a number of our hard-working elections officers make them a bit unstable and add to the grey hairs they have no doubt already accumulated during this exercise. So thank you very much to the officers for their work on that. I know it has been particularly challenging. Any other member? No? In which case we'll move to the recommendations as printed. All those please show. That is carried. Thank you. That moves us on to item number 8, which is the General Fund Budget Monitoring Quarter 2. Councillor Croft.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. As you say, this is our general fund position up to the end of the second quarter of this financial year, and the story on this occasion, while we still have a considerable challenge to balance the books in year, it is a more positive story, because as we reported to Cabinet and Council last time, when we reported a deficit of projected in-year deficit of £485,000, we immediately took steps to implement a recruitment freeze and accelerate our move towards efficiency and our restructured programme. And that is starting to bear fruit. So the deficit has come down by approximately £20,000, but it also has to be noted that we have put in a very prudent provision within these figures for potential costs that could eventuate in terms of our planning and legal appeals. So should we win those cases, and we're reasonably confident, that will be an even more positive position as we pull the budget back towards the end of the year. So otherwise, Mr. Chairman, I shall move the report.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Croft. And I will second that from the Chair. Any non-Cabinet member? Councillor Condacor.
I think this £465,000 overspend projected needs to be looked in context, because it's the third year you'll have a massive overspend, and I think by your 3 years in office you'll be well over £2 million of overspending on the general fund. So it is something you've got badly wrong. And I think a lot of it is over-optimism on things like the parking charges and what they would raise. And I think in terms of emergency measures, we need to be looking at trying to get more income from our parking system and using it more wisely. You've just taken out the 2 electric charging points in the car park at the back. I hope you're going to return those to at least revenue earning spaces as quickly as possible, and have a look at some of the charging schemes. Harefield Road is a basket case. We probably pay more in non-domestic rates on it than we take in income, and we should be looking at something like leasing it out, closing it, making it free so we don't have to pay non-domestic rates. But we need to do something about some of our parking charges so that actually we get more income. Likewise, in Bedworth railway station, we now charge a fortune to park and absolutely no one parks there, so we get no income. So I do think, in terms of our budget and our shortfall of income, a review of our parking charges to make them more efficient would be very useful. We also talked about the planning income and planning appeals. We really need to look at getting our housing target down to a lower level so that actually applicants won't keep trying it on so much. And then, of course, we've got the planning officers who are in short supply, and you've got £120,000 for agency costs. And I noticed that, I think it's South Cambridgeshire, it's going to a 4-day working week. And one of the things they really said was they need less agency staff because they can recruit planners far easier on a 4-day contract. So I do hope you'll end your hostility to 4-day contracts. Thank you, Chair.
Any points of clarification for Councillor Condacor? I have to wonder where Councillor Condacor has been for the past 3 years. Has he forgotten the inflation that we've had, mainly arising from the war in Ukraine, which has sent fuel prices sky high, which has sent inflation soaring to 10%? Where has he been? Because this council has not been immune to those challenges. Actually, we have tried our best to weather the storm in as good a situation as we possibly can, given the headwinds that we have faced. It defies logic for Councillor Condacor to say that everything would have been hunky-dory if it wasn't for the nasty Conservatives being in control. If it wasn't for the Conservatives being in control and carrying on at the spending rate that the previous administration did, we would have been issuing a 114 notice. It is thanks to this administration that we are avoiding bankruptcy and taking the difficult decisions that are needed to protect our borough council and the services that it delivers. For him to come along and say about the planning numbers, we are doing just that. We are reducing the planning numbers, something which he finally, after years of quibbling, stood up in that very same place in a council chamber not too long ago and said, you are reducing the housing numbers. And we are. In fact, Coventry City Council are trying to dictate to us what we do with our housing numbers because we have lowered them and refused to accept their overspill. So perhaps he ought to go and talk to the Labour lot over there and extol the virtues of lower housing numbers, because it's certainly not an argument we need to win here. It's an argument which needs to be won across the border. And we will, and we have, stood up to what feels sometimes like the tyrants of Coventry City Council dictating our policy to us. And I will disappoint Councillor Condacor again. This council is about public service delivery, and we will never go to a 4-day week council under a Conservative administration. We are here to deliver for the people, not give people a 20% uplift in their wages to do 20% less work. If they want to reduce their hours, they do the conventional thing which everyone else does in other public and private sector jobs. They apply for a flexible working arrangement, and they will get paid for the hours they do, not for the hours they don't want to do. It's pure lunacy. In fact, he'd probably add to the financial problems that this council faces if we listened to the gospel according to St. Keith, and we will not be doing that. So, all those in favour of the recommendations as printed, please show. Thank you very much. That moves us on to the HRA budget. Again, Councillor Croft.
Thank you very much, Mr Chairman. This is a much more positive story. We've been able to pull it back from a £300,000 plus projected deficit to statistically in line. I think you're about £4,000 overspent under the current projections, Councillor Golby. And again, this is our much more prudent approach to take on staffing and driving forward with the restructure and the efficiency programme, which we will continue to deliver. So I shall move the report, Mr Chair.
Does that receive a seconder? Councillor Golby. And you've reserved your right to speak. Any non-cabinet member? Councillor Condacourt.
Thank you, Chair. I'm quite amused at being called a saint. I'm not sure it normally applies to me. On the housing budget, one of the things that keeps getting mentioned are material costs. And we had this at the audit committee last night because a lot of materials were getting accumulated at the depots as they keep getting booked out, purchased, and then leftover materials get accumulated at the depots. And it'd be really useful in terms of spending pressures if the materials aspect was looked at in more detail. Are we over-ordering? Are we not using our stock well enough, etc.? And it'd be nice if in these accounts it actually said what our material budget was. It breaks it out in many different ways, repairs and maintenance, but if the Councillor Croft or Councillor Golby could actually tell us what the actual material cost is per year, we could then see how much trying to drive that more efficient use would actually save us. I mean, generally things on the housing account are better because rents go up with inflation and various things tie in with inflation. And it's in some ways easy in the short term to balance the books, but long term we need is it a 30-year housing plan to be developed? And I know that needs to be reworked on with all the changes, but it'd be good if you could also indicate when we had that new plan. Thank you.
Any points of clarification? No? Anything officers wish to come back on? No? Oh, I was going to bring you in after. Councillor Golby, you reserved your right.
There's literally nothing that will make you happy, is there? We are on for, we've got a £29 million budget and we're about £4,000 off where we should be, with huge inflationary pressures. And I'll just point out that we didn't actually put the rent up in line with inflation, it was less than inflation. So we did not get the full inflationary balance on that. And the idea that you want people spending time focusing on how many nails have we got in a box at the depot and when was it booked out. I understand that we've got facilities in place for monitoring of equipment and such like, and things get booked out when they need to get booked out and not when they're not. And we do have to hold reserve of stocks in some instances because we can't keep nipping down to Jewson's every 5 minutes, because that adds extra length and time into doing any sort of repairs and maintenance. Now, the whole transformation project is nowhere near finished. Repairs and maintenance are part of that transformation, and they are being reviewed and amended accordingly. And I'll just point out as well, because something that's seems to be going a little bit awry, is we, since the day we took over, have done nothing but scrutinise and review and change where needed. Processes, delivery, the lot. And it doesn't happen overnight because God knows we've had a mountain to climb since we took on this leadership, an absolute mountain. And it all goes on behind closed doors, and the constant criticisms of you rubbish, you rubbish, you rubbish. It's really, we're not, because I can guarantee you, like you said, if we hadn't have taken over when we did, this council would have been bankrupt. 100% would have been bankrupt, because the way that the finances were going, there was no other way that the people who were steering that ship at the time would have changed course in any great form to stop that from happening. It's only for us coming in and grasping the nettle and absolutely going through this place from top to bottom that we are not in a position where there'll be a 114 notice issued. And I am absolutely willing to stand on that. And every time we hear this accusation of we're not doing things right, your complaints are getting smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller, because now we're down to screws and tacks in the depot. So I actually don't think we're doing too bad. And there's more to come, particularly from my teams. There is a lot more to come. There's stuff going on that we're nowhere near finished with the transformation. And that's process and people. So I expect to see these numbers much improved. And the review of the housing that you keep going on about, you will get it when it's ready. And we are making sure that it's done properly. And you don't do things overnight to do them properly. So again, I am measuring twice and cutting once. Correct. And that is, you will have to wait until I am satisfied before you get to see it. So asking officers, asking me, it will be done when I'm satisfied that it is ready for public consumption. That's that.
Thank you, Councillor Golby. Any other member wish to speak? No? Oh, sorry, Councillor Baxter-Payne.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to look at Councillor Condacor and say, you obviously weren't listening last night, because item agenda number 6, which was a review from the internal auditor, if you look at item 7, housing repairs stock control, you will notice that it has been highlighted and the actions have been put in place, and the internal auditor has actually lifted that risk to satisfactory due to the actions taking place. And I believe one of them, as you mentioned, was that we now can return unused stock. So I don't think you were listening last night to that action, so I don't know why you raise it as a point tonight.
Thank you, Councillor Baxter-Payne. That was an interesting intervention from you as Chair of the Audit and Standards Committee, receiving the actual report from the qualified auditors. Any other member? No? In which case we will move to the vote. All those in favour, please show. Thank you very much. That is carried. That moves us on to the Capital Monitoring Quarter 2 report. Councillor Croft.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. As we advertised last time and at the full council at some considerable length, the report for capital up to Q2 projects that we will have considerable underspends this year due to our old friend project slippage. And as I advertised, we are taking the opportunity of this pause to review the entire programme. And as Councillor Golby has just alluded to, we will publish that review and the results of it when it is ready and when we are satisfied that the work has been done, to ensure that we both fulfil the promise of regeneration in Nuneaton and Bedworth and keep our council's finances on an even footing. So I shall move the report as written.
Thank you, Councillor Croft, and I will second that from the Chair. Any non-Cabinet member? Councillor Condacor.
I think you should never describe an under-delivery of a capital programme as underspend, because we haven't delivered what we've said we're going to deliver. If we buy a pint of beer and they give us a third of a pint of beer, we haven't got 2/3 off, we've got 1/3 of the beer. And this is what we've got in the capital programme. We had an £88 million programme, of which you're delivering maybe 38, 39 million. There's a massive amount of stuff that's not happening. And as I did try to ask at the finance scrutiny, but Councillor Croft wasn't there, how much are we spending on things like Bridge to Living, where we've bought all these shops in anticipation of them being delivered as redeveloped this year, and then now they're just sitting there empty, maybe paying non-domestic rates, definitely not generating any income. And it is really important that we don't take out a lot of things in the Nuneaton town centre and have nothing happen to them for a year or 2 years or 3 years. This is why it's important, and it comes back to this measure twice, do once, to know you can do something before you go and wreck whatever the existing use of an area is. I think the capital programme does need this publishing of what the plan is, the new plan. It does need a 3 or 4 year diagram, spreadsheet or whatever, that says what the total cost of these projects is, because in this report, like the hotel, we see it's a £17 million in-year spend, but it's really a £20 million or £22 million, who knows. This is where we need to see more than 1 year's worth of plan to know how much everything's costing compared to what it's supposed to cost and what's going on. And I'm really bitterly disappointed at the scrapping of the flood alleviation scheme. I know we only had 1/5 of the money to do it, but if we did 1/5 of the project, we would have some flood alleviation. The flood damage was estimated to be £17 million saved by a £5 million project. Just saying, oh, we won't care about flooding, we'll let shops do preventative measures, we'll let them put boards indoors or whatever. We are adding to the problems and creating developments that will be uninsurable or unrentable in future if they're not belt and braced designed to be up to climate change. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Condacor. Any points of clarification? Clarification. Go ahead.
So you talk about a fifth of the flood alleviation. Which fifth would you choose? And how would you choose it? And how would you divvy up a whole project into fifths? Which street would you flood and which would you wouldn't? And when we talk about flooding, we've just had some significant rainfall recently, but can you point out which areas of the flood alleviation scheme you would do and which parts of the town flooded and what, you know, the mental gymnastics that you've just used there, I just would like a bit of clarity on which fifth would you choose out of the flood alleviation scheme? Just keep it at that, thanks.
Councillor Condacor.
Thank you, Chair. The catastrophic flooding modelled by County Council was the overtopping of the Coventry Canal from flows coming down through Camp Hill from Galley Common. They suggested we build 100,000 cubic metres of storage on Whitford Park, part of which was going to be embankments, so actually not areas that you fill with water all the time, but actually they only fill with water effectively when the overland flows happen. And the other part was a sunken area near the new housing on Queen Elizabeth Road. If we had £1 million and it could be matched with some money from the EA, we could build a smaller scheme up there that could be extended when you get more money. The thing about flood storage is, it's like a fuel tank or whatever. If you have a smaller fuel tank and then you have another fuel tank, and then, you can accumulate storage. And the overtopping happens a certain frequency. The more storage you have, the longer it is between events that will be to overtop the canal and do catastrophic flooding down into the town. So any amount of storage will reduce the risk in the return period. And the rain we had a week ago was probably a 1 in 4 year event. It wasn't a once a decade event. It was 50 millimetres of rain over 3 days. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Condacor. I'm slightly baffled by the back of the fag packet engineering that we have just been subject to. The reality of the situation is we had a £1 million or thereabout budget for flood alleviation. The experts, and I qualify this with experts rather than Councillor Condacor, I know he likes to think he is, but he isn't, said to us that actually the best flood alleviation measures that we could put in would be a new reservoir at Whittleford Park, and you would be talking £10 million plus to deliver that project. Now, that isn't a fifth, that is a tenth of the budget, Where are you going to find the other £9 million? He castigates us for the existing capital programme, but then would want us to try and find the remaining £9 million. He'd be quite happily go around telling people that we can do this, but flood what is a secondary park which serves thousands of people in the Galley Common, Camp Hill, Stockingford area of town, depriving them of great amenity value in the area. Then you would even have, even assuming that you could even build the thing, you've then got to run it. This isn't Bosworth Water Park. This is Nuneaton and Bedworth Borough Council. We do not have the resources financially to run that. On the previous agenda item, he was criticising us on the finances, but then would want to add additional financial pressure on the budget to run whatever flood alleviation scheme happens to be his flavour of the day. But the reality, we just could not do that. And actually, our capital projects, we are evaluating in light of the inflationary pressures. That includes that is a substantial amount of that is materials and workforce that goes with it. And we have to be a responsible council in making sure that in any regeneration project we deliver, it is financially viable and sustainable. And that is exactly what we are going to do, and we are getting the right people in to evaluate what the art of the possible is given the financial constraints. No one is more desperate than me to try and get those projects underway. Officers know I am always chasing them. Cabinet know I am always chasing them for this, but it has to be done responsibly. So I'm perfectly happy with the capital monitoring report as it stands, because it's doing the right thing as we need it right now. Councillor Golby.
Thank you. Yeah, it's just a comment to echo what you've said. We are acutely aware of the town centre. That's been one of our priorities since before we were elected into control. So we do know about the needs to get these things done, but you can't just go and jump in with both feet when halfway through a project it all might go slightly wrong. You've got to figure out a pathway through this, and it's a financial pathway, like it or not. I would love to get the diggers in to quite a few places in the town centre and just crack on and get it done, but financially we just can't do it. There's a balancing act, and there's a like I say, a financial pathway to getting these things achieved and to doing them well and to making sure that we don't end up massively up the Swanee with these things. And something else to point out as well is that it's worth noting for residents in the borough that quite honestly, the Greens want to flood one of the major destination parks, and a couple of weeks ago it was Eastborough Way. So we've moved now from one end of the borough to the other that wants the Greens need to put underwater or would like to put underwater. It's ludicrous, absolutely ludicrous. You cannot split up projects in the way that has just been described, again, without having a view of the finances. And the finances were that a flood alleviation project, not only would it take out Whittleford Park, which is a major park in the area, in some of the most deprived areas of the borough as well, but it was a £10 million plus project. We haven't got that. So it's all what ifs and maybes, but then when you put it down on paper, oh, we can't do that, it's unacceptable. But we're expected to listen to fairy stories that are told as objective truth, which is just ridiculous. So, yeah. So if you live on Eastborough Way or you live in Whittleford Park, get yourself some water wings if the Greens get in, because you'll be treading water. Yeah. Thanks, Chair.
No, Councillor Condacour, there is no right of reply.
In which case you can say things that I've not said and are not true.
Councillor Condacour, you know the rules. You've been here long enough. Thank you very much. Councillor Condacour.
£10 million?
It is £10 million, Councillor Condacour. Councillor Condacour, you've had your opportunity. Carry on, and I'll ask you to leave. In which case, can we move to the vote on the recommendations? All those in favour, please show. Thank you very much. That is carried. That moves us on to item 11, which is recommendations from overview and scrutiny panels. I have not received any at the moment. That leads us on to agenda item number 12, which is any other items. And there is an additional item for Cabinet to consider tonight, which is on the addendum. And we had a Civic Honours subcommittee meeting on Monday the 6th of November. There were other recommendations which will come forward to Cabinet in due course, but these are the most pressing ones to deal with at the moment because of the actions which follow. And the Civic Honours subcommittee would like to put forward 4 honorary aldermen or older women, those being former councillors Sonia Wilson, Jeff Ashford, Sheila Hancox and Bob Hicks. And for the position of, or honour of, honorary freemen or women of the borough, we put forward 7 nominations, which were Frank Parker, Murray Richards, Julie Earnshaw, Martin Bradley, Gareth Edwards, Carol Valentine and Paul Goff. Since the meeting, and it was indicated to us at the meeting that Councillor Watkins, as Leader of the Opposition, had an additional name to submit. He has submitted that today, and that is Mrs. Abeda Suleiman Voraji, MBE. She has set up a women's group at the Edward Street Day Centre many years ago, voluntary escort for schools and a voluntary director, and of course has received an honour from the Queen back in 2021. I am happy to accept that and put that forward as an amendment to the recommendations. Does that receive a seconder? Councillor Croft, thank you very much. Any non-Cabinet member wish to speak? No? In which case we will move to the recommendations, and we are looking at trying to convene an extraordinary council before Christmas to do that, so that will be sent through to members as quickly as we possibly can, and the nominees notified. All those in favour of the recommendation, please show. Thank you very much. Contrary to some rumours, it was not Conservative best pals and mates. That moves on to agenda item number 13, which is exclusion of the public and press. Be recommended that under section 100A subsection 4 of the Local Government Act 1972, the public and press be excluded from the meeting during consideration of the following items, it being likely that there would be disclosure of exempt information of the description specified in paragraphs 3 and 5 of part 1 of schedule 12A to the Act. I will move that from the chair, it being a mouthful. All those in... sorry, does that receive a seconder for Councillor Golby, got your hand up first. All those in favour, please show. Thank you very much. That is carried. Kelly, can I ask you to turn off the recording, please?